Hello. So in the last few hours, I've come across two reports which I believe exemplify a lot of the double standards and dishonesty that is going on right now with Black Lives Matter. I'll just get straight into it for time's sake. The first article is from the New York Post, and I'll just read it out. It's not excessively long. As always, I'll put a link to the article. And the title is Harvard grad Claira Janover, I assume that's pronounced Janover, says she's lost Deloitte's job over TikTok stab threat, and the report is by Lee Brown and Aaron Feiss. The Harvard graduate who said in a TikTok video that she would stab anyone who told her all lives matter revealed in a new pair of recordings that she has lost a job over the perceived threats and ensuing furore. Standing up for Black Lives Matter put me in a place online to be seen by millions of people, Thierry Claira Janover said in a new video posted Wednesday afternoon. The job that I'd worked really hard to try and get meant a lot, excuse me, to get and meant a lot to me has called me and fired me because of everything. Janover's LinkedIn account lists her as an incoming government and public business service analyst at Deloitte, a UK-based accounting firm. During the video, Janover gestured to what appears to be a page from the company's website and noted that she was axed, even though they claim to stand against systemic bias, racism, and unequal treatment. Janover, who graduated from Harvard in May with a degree in government and psychology, went viral after posting a video to the platform railing against people with the nerve to share entitled caucasity to say all lives matter. I'm a stab you, the Connecticut native said in the video, zooming in tight to her face. I must stab you, and while you're struggling and bleeding out, I must show you my paper cut and say my cut matters too. Janover, who contended that the message was an analogy rather than a serious threat, has since received a deluge of threats against her own life and safety. In her new video, she blamed supporters of President Trump for going after her job. Trump supporters took my job away from me, she said in another video posted Wednesday. I've gotten death threats, rape threats, violent threats. It was okay, but now my future's entirely compromised because Trump supporters have decided to come for my life. Through tears of defiance, Janover vowed not to back down. I'm too strong for you. I'm too strong for any of you all lives matter racist Trump supporters, she said. It sucks, but it doesn't suck as much as systemic racism, and I'm not going to stop using my platform to advocate for it. She also took a parting shot at Deloitte. I'm sorry, Deloitte, that you can't see that, she said. That you work hardest, seek enough to fight somebody who's going to make an indelible change in the world. I'm laughing because she obviously sees herself in very high regard and is going to have an impact. Deloitte did not immediately respond to multiple requests for comment. Okay, so I'll get onto the other story in a minute, but just thinking of this one first of all. There's a few things that's striking about this. Firstly, there's a bit of a trend, isn't there? Because we've seen other cases where, by the way, I don't know what her background is, but she's ostensibly of Asian heritage. I don't know what her background is. I'm not going to speculate. I just don't know, which is not why. She is an ardent Black Lives Matter activist. There's a few things that are striking. When we've had other cases, such as Dr. Priyamvada Gopal, such as Sarah Jong, such as within the Labour Party, Monroe Bergdorf, um, in every case where you have people making explicitly inflammatory posts or tweets, whether it be vitriolically racist or whether it be an explicit threat, they always double down and try to make excuses for it. In this case, she's claiming it was an analogy, it wasn't meant to be taken seriously. But the fact of the matter is, if she has as much influence as she claimed, I suspect it's a good deal less than she claimed. But let's say that thousands of people follow her, at least, if not millions. Let's say thousands of people follow her. She's using that platform, abusing that platform, incidentally, to incite violence. I don't care how she calls it, that is inciting violence. She is basically saying that if you have a different political view from her, you deserve to be stabbed. Not for the first time, you have someone of this ideology thinking that she'll get away with it, thinking that she can excuse it, A, because she happens to be a minority, and B, because she's far left. So she thinks that she can hide behind some sort of moral argument. She accuses the company of cowardice. She is the coward. She is absolutely a coward because she doesn't have the integrity and the human decency to recognize that she was wrong and to just show some humility and accept that she was wrong. Instead, she plays the victim. And I mentioned the trajectory with this. As with the other cases, there was a backlash. Understandably, if you make a very inflammatory comment online with the way the internet is, some people will let their anger in response to that get the better of them and they will, do unsavory things. And I don't condone it. People have been making nit threats against her, violent threats. Two wrongs don't make a right, so I don't condone that. But this is always a trajectory. And my response is, what did she expect? What did she expect? Did she honestly think making a comment like that, the Trump supporters that she talks about would be just okay with it? Did they just say, oh, well, she's threatening to stab us? But, maybe it's just an analogy. We'll just overlook that. It's nonsensical. Absolutely nonsensical. Um, there's responsibility when you write things online for all of us, myself included, all of us. And if you're going to write something stupid, at least don't, if you really believe it, then back it up. And if you don't believe it, or you really think it's been taken out of context, then at least acknowledge how it could have been misinterpreted. I don't think it was. I think she meant it. I'm not prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt because looking at this woman's background, she seems like a very toxic individual. Honestly, I'd never heard of her before today. She clearly has a very entitled mindset. Um, and once again, she thinks her academic position, the Harvard graduate, that's something I find actually rather disturbing because these people cannot come from a point of ignorance. It's not like they've limited education and they're just genuinely ignorant people. They're often university professors, academics. That's what's so troubling. So this entitled hate monger, um, she can blubber away about losing her job, but what did she expect? Does she think that Deloitte can honestly employ someone that is coming out with and making violent threats? So she can cry herself to sleep for all I care. She's full of self pity. She has no humility. She's got a lot of arrogance. I hope she finds it very difficult to get jobs. And of course, she'll whine about systemic racism over that. Um, but what's notable is the people who are defending her. I've already seen, I posted this on my timeline, and already a Black Lives Matter activist who I used to be quite friendly with, but unfortunately he's really went down this path of, we're right and everyone else is wrong. I think I'm going to have to delete him from a friend. It's because the things he's coming out with. I mean, he said, oh, it was just a joke, just a joke. I mean, if you had some sort of white nationalist say something similar, they would absolutely be not denounced as a racist. If you had a white celebrity say something similar, they would lose her job. She has lost her job, so at least there's some good outcome with this. I give Deloitte credit for being consistent. She says they're supposed to stand up for systemic racism. Well, they are, dear. They're firing you. They're firing you. Clearly, you have a problem with the expression "all lives matter," which ostensibly means you have a problem with white lives, um, and technically Asian and Hispanic lives. But she clearly is going to her focus of rage and moral indignation is going to be aimed at white people. I have to say, one of the excuses that Black Lives Matter activists often use is, oh, but what about our white allies? Well, I have to be honest, I don't have a very high opinion of these white allies. I find a lot of them be basically useful idiots for the sort of divisive double standards we see when it comes to how racist attitudes are dealt with. Um, I just think there has to be consistency. There's been there's been moves recently by, I believe Facebook is now cracking down on advertising that is deemed to be connected to hate groups or hate speech. But there is a charge, Majid Nawaz made this charge, that it's inconsistent. It's only aimed at white nationalist types. Now, to be fair, I have no problem with white nationalists being targeted if they're making explicit threats. But there is an inconsistency here. As Majid Nawaz pointed out, Louis Farrakhan, the black nationalist leader, formerly of the Nation of Islam, has made blatantly anti Semitic, homophobic rants, and he still has a presence on Facebook. So do other Islamist groups. There are activists within Black Lives Matter that unquestionably are racist towards all white people. They get a free pass, nothing happens to them. I know for a fact that I have personally reported several pages, and it's not something, I don't go online and say, oh, who am I going to report today? But occasionally I have tried to report individuals who are blatantly stirring up hatred against all white people. Facebook hasn't done a thing about it. They said, you've done the right thing by reporting this. Thank you for doing so. Unfortunately, on this occasion, we did not see any need to remove the person, even though they're inflammatory posts. So there's clearly double standards at play here. Now, I'm at 11 minutes, so go on to the next point. Terry Crews, who of course is black, blasted for tweet about Black Lives Matter. And this is what the report says. This one is from, just bear with me a second, I'm just scrolling up. This is from The Independent. Terry Crews, who was involved in the Me Too campaign, has been accused of making willfully destructive comments about the Black Lives Matter movement. The actor came under fire for a tweet he posted on Tuesday, which reads, if you're a child of God, you're my brother and sister. I have a family of every race, creed, and ideology. Excuse me. Ads appearing. Hope that wasn't too obvious here. Now, I'll read that again. If you're a child of God, you are my brother and sister. I have a family of every race, creed, and ideology. We must ensure Black Lives Matter doesn't morph into Black Lives Better. That to me seems like a very reasonable comment. Um, Many of Crew's Twitter followers took issue with his suggestion that the movement will lead to black people becoming superior over other races. I don't understand why your posts are so pandering to unfounded arguments against the BLM movement, wrote one person. No one, not a damn soul, this is verbatim, said Black Lives Better. This is being willfully destructive, disingenuous, with microaggressions towards Black Lives Matter. I'm tired of saying do better, but do better. Another wrote, it's actually embarrassing how intent you are undermining people who are fighting for the humanity to be viewed equally, block capitals. Nobody is taking it there except you and those uncomfortable with having to address the elephant in the room. I implore you, please do better. This in it. And this is where we really see the ugly side coming through. A third said, you truly are worthless to us. White people can have you, especially since you love doing their work for them. White people can have you, especially since you love doing your work for them. And I won't read out the rest of the art. Well, actually, there's only a little bit in there as well. Earlier this month, Cruz landed in hot water for his comments about black supremacy in the wake of the George Floyd protests taking place across the world. Tyler James Williams, who starred with Cruz in Everyone Hates Chris, was one of the first to condemn the actor's tweet, writing, Terry, brother, I know your heart and I know I have love for you and always will. No one is calling for black supremacy, and the narrative that we are hurts our cause and our people. We're just vigorously vetting our allies because time and time again they have failed us in the past. Vigorously vetting our allies means groupthink. It means cancelling people who you disagree with. It means smearing people falsely as racists. And it means calling black people who dared speak against Black Lives Matter. And this is verbatim because this has literally happened. Not a term I would like to use personally, but Uncle Tom's. This is what is happening. I think with Black Lives Matter, there's kind of two faces to this movement. There's a polite face. face that says, no, no, we're just campaigning against racism and for equality and against police brutality. We just want justice for black people. We're not against white people. That's a polite face. Then you look at some of the activists, you look at the undercurrent of their opinions, you look at the sort of far left agenda that they really have, and you start to see that there is a lot more to this movement. That's why people who had endorsed the movement early on, I mean earlier this month, not early on in its history, but early on with a lot of pandering, are now backing away from that. There's starting to be a change in attitudes. It's why the survey that was going around asking people if they agreed with following statements and attitudes, overwhelmingly, most people were getting results of like 20% agree, 25% agree. Now, were these right wing conservatives? No. Many of them were left wing people who actually thought that they support the movement. But when they started looking at some of the attitude, for example, about abolishing prison and other such crazy positions, they couldn't agree with those positions, so they found that the overall result was low. Now, granted, those sort of surveys are almost always flawed because the questions can be quite abstract and they're not always looking at the whole situation. So I'm not saying that represents the whole situation, but I'm very wary of Black Lives Matter. No question about it. I don't think they're being entirely honest, and the intolerant group think that we're just vetting our allies. That's really a way of saying we're going to silence and shout you down if you don't agree with us, if you don't agree with the group think. They're intellectually dishonest. And I think it's toxic. I think it is utterly toxic. So we have two examples here of two minority people: a black man who questions Black Lives Matter being denounced, and an Asian woman supporting Black Lives Matter who's fired from her job but is then treated as the victim. I've no doubt there was probably some backlash that was unsavoury. Maybe some people threatened her with violence or with rape threats. That's stupid. It's boneheaded. I don't support it. I've always said that. You don't beat people by reducing yourself to their level. Um, but for her, in the position that she's in, to basically say that anyone who says all lives matter should be stabbed. By the way, dear, they're not just Trump supporters. I pretty much share that principle. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm very critical of President Trump. So I want to see the intellectual dishonesty of Black Lives Matter really, really challenged. Because what you get when you get a movement that is pushing a narrative, we are perpetual victims, and any white person that questions this is a hardcore racist. Any black person that questions it is a traitor. The intolerance is coming from this movement. And it is about time that some of those in power started doing their job and actually holding this movement to account. By those in power, I'm talking about particularly figures of the media. The amount of pandering that there has been going on in this movement. I mean, Terry Crews critics accused him of pandering to white people. I would say what's actually been happening is a lot of celebrities, including, yes, a lot of white celebrities, and media outlets and so on have been pandering to Black Lives Matter because they think that if they don't, then they'll be denounced as a racist. And it's depressing because for a movement that really wallows in a victimhood narrative and really wallows in the notion that white people have all the power, they have actually been very effective in terms of controlling the rhetoric and and denouncing anyone who dares dissent. So my message would be: if you're a Black Lives Matter activist, okay, you're against racism, you're against police brutality, fine. But if you're going to condone regressive attitudes in your midst, if you're going to condone someone saying that she wants to knife people, I don't care how you excuse it, if it's an analogy or whatever, the sheer arrogance then that she has to not admit that she was wrong. Similar attitude from Dr. Gopal at Cambridge University, and Sarah Jong at the New York Times a few years ago, and Monroe Bergdorf within the Labour Party. Labour eventually expelled her. Time and time and time again, we see a situation where minority racists, and hate mongers think that they get a free pass simply because they have a minority status. And it's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. Some of us really are consistent. And I think this is a really challenging time because holding by your principles and standing up to these thugs and bullies, and that's what I believe they are, um, takes a certain degree of, I don't want to say bravery. I mean, my life isn't being threatened or anything like that. But if I was, put it this way, if I was a more prominent person, if I was a celebrity, if I was someone more in the public eye, the things I am saying, I would almost certainly get a backlash from woke bullies. Absolutely. I wouldn't particularly care what they think, but the concern would lie in repercussions, you know. So that's why we do need to be very careful about what is defined as hate speech and how big multimedia or multinational social media giants like Facebook looks at these things. So if, for example, Facebook is tackling white nationalists, but they're turning a blind eye to black nationalists or black racists or Asian racists, um, that's going to anger a lot of people. Majid Nawaz made the point that it's actually going to lead to a backlash against people like him because some bone-headed white nationalist types will then think it's a race war. But I honestly think that Black Lives Matter offer no solutions. No solutions. Because their whole narrative is about white people are the problem. And I know what they will say. Oh, but we have white people supporting us. Yeah, white liberals who want to grovel and to wear their silly little placards and to bow their heads in shame and, apologize for events 200 years ago. It's their right, but if they want to make fools of themselves, that's their business. What they can't do is demand that the rest of us share their guilt. Pathetic. Um, so I want to see Black Lives Matter being challenged a lot more. I think they've been given basically a free ride over the last month for the most part. And I think the media collectively hasn't really done its job in holding them to account. I see the media, the collective media, their responsibility is to hold power to account, right? Black Lives Matter is a powerful movement. It's a movement that has had trickle effects across the world. I'm not going to say it's all bad. So, opening up debate about police brutality, particularly in certain parts of the world, is very important. Fine. The problem with Black Lives Matter is they do have a pretty far left neo Marxist agenda, dismantling the state, um, defunding police. Well, it goes beyond that. They want to get rid of the police completely, they want to abolish prisons. There is a pretty far left agenda here. And without question, there are bigots within the movement. But does Black Lives Matter expel them? Does it say, no, those people don't represent us? No, they're quiet at best. Sometimes they outright defend them, as I have seen from the attitude to this woman. So it's really a testing time for those of us who really, really are consistent. And we just need to stay steady. Not let these woke bullies intimidate us into silence. So I'm making a point of vocally defending minority people who do think outside the box, who do say, no, Black Lives Matter are not speaking for us. We have our own voice and we're not going to be bullied into silence. So Terry Crews, I respect the man for simply asking questions. Even if you think he's wrong, then this business about, you have to keep on in line. You need to toe the line. Um, it just needs to, something very sad is going on with the sort of intolerance we're seeing from the regressive left. And yes, I know they've got regressive right equivalents, but I'd make this point, to those who say, "Oh, what about white nationalists? What about white racists?" Yeah, they're a problem. The difference is the media will hold them to account. They will be condemned. Okay, maybe not by the President of the United States. I think Trump's attitude to race relations has been appalling. It's the other extreme from CNN. You know, CNN is race baiting to only cover racism against black people. Trump downright ignores white supremacists and white racism. Trump is an utterly incompetent leader. Um, I'd like to see a president who really, really takes an assertive and consistent stand and really, really understands what's going on here. So if Biden gets in, he really needs to certainly listen to the concerns of Black Lives Matter, but he also needs to be not basically being used by them. And the evidence so far isn't overly inspiring. I think Biden, like a lot of Democrats, are just going out of his way to virtue signal. So these are challenging times. As a white guy, I'm not going to be shamed by anyone. I am not going to tolerate some, Harvard graduate or Cambridge graduate or whatever they might be, thinking that because they have darker skin than me, they somehow have a moral high ground over me. They don't, okay? They don't. And I will argue my points. People disagree, they can disagree. But I really, really think that reasonable people everywhere and people who are genuinely anti-racist against all forms of racism and against all forms of injustice. They need to understand what's going on. They need to speak out. There was that saying, silence is violence. Um, well, actually, silence in the current situation has become unavoidable. So we all have to have an opinion on this. If you're white and you don't have an opinion, well, okay, that's your right. I wouldn't force anyone to have pontificate, but or to even take a position. But I do think that this is more than rhetoric. I think some of the actual physical demands that Black Lives Matter are making are dangerous. I mean, abolishing all prisons is clearly insane. America does lock up too many people. There's a legitimate issue around that. But abolishing prisons? There's obviously a trap there. That would mean them releasing white supremacists who might be in jail for hate crimes. They haven't thought that one through, have they?